I'm Dr Nathaniel Swain. I'm a teacher and instructional coach, and I work with schools around the country on their instructional practice, particularly in the area of literacy. I also have the great pleasure of working with the ELSA team as a literacy and instructional expert. Something really important about the use of front of class presentations is that the teacher is still driving the lesson. Something that I work with a lot of schools on is making good use of slides, for example, but not letting teachers become a slave to the slides. So essentially what we're looking for is teachers reading the room, using checking for understanding to see if students are with them, to see if they're understanding, and if not, to be able to make the decision to go back and reteach or to slow down and model something in more detail. The other thing that we can do to be more responsive as we use high quality materials is actually ensuring we know that we've got the structure of the lesson right, that we've got students sitting in an appropriate position, that they can hear and see, and that we can best respond to those students who might need us more often. So if we're able to identify students that might be needing more help quicker, we can then set up some students with a spelling task or a word and then work with that student more individually. That ability to be responsive but also adaptive in your practice can take you from just running through the motions of the lesson to actually really getting targeted feedback, targeted practice for those students who need it the most. When you're getting students to participate and to actively respond, this is not just for purposes of attention, it's also to ensure that they're really getting the most out of every lesson. So paying attention to see if students are producing the sounds correctly, if they're identifying the first to the last sound correctly, if they're able to count the sounds on their fingers or engage in all the gestures that ELSA has got built in. All of that gives you good information about how well the lesson is going, whether you're on track or whether you actually need to go back and reteach. Now you might see amongst your students or hear amongst them by calling upon some students individually or by calling on some of the room before the other side of the room that some students have got it and some students haven't got it. And if that's the case, you can get students to start spelling some words that follow that pattern as per the front of class presentation, but also know that you can go back and break the words down to provide that individualized scaffolding and prompting for students when they need it, and that can happen anytime. This is how you go from the lesson sort of ticking along to one which actually embeds quite a lot of individualized support or individualized prompting, which some students really need. So as students are working and showing their understanding on the mini whiteboards, either spelling or identifying the sounds within words, for example, we're essentially trying to pick up anything and everything that's relevant. If we aren't really concerned about handwriting at this point, we could just be looking for correct spelling or correct sequences of sounds. If it's a really unfamiliar word, say we're writing one of the sentences, we might not even expect every single word to be spelled correctly, but we're looking for those target words or the target sounds, for example. However, if we have time and if students are showing proficiency, we can pay attention to some of those other things. You might see some letter reversals or some issues with spaces between letters, say too big or too small a space. And you might see finger spaces missing between words in a sentence, punctuation or capital letters missing. If that's the case and you have the scope for it, all of that incidental feedback could also be provided, and you could also preempt it by saying and reminding the whole class, remember, we're writing a sentence, what does it begin with? Or you can preemptively do things for reversals like the B and D reversal to give them a little nudge to get that right. So the whiteboards are great because you can see what's happening inside the student's head, you can see if they're getting proficiency, and you can also get a quick read of the room. When the room's going well, you can go deeper. When things aren't going so well and there's lots of gaps, it also reminds you that you can go back and you can reteach, or you can break down the task even more so that it's not maybe a full sentence, maybe it's just a single word that we're trying to get right, and then maybe a word after that that follows the same pattern.